Now is the time to go ahead and put those great tasting tomatoes in the ground. And I know it can be very overwhelming at times to actually figure out what's the best eating tomato for you as a family. So we're going to talk today a little bit here today at Three Lines Garden Center about some of the things to consider when you're actually selecting those different types of tomatoes for your vegetable gardens at home. The first thing I'd like to talk about today is that there's actually 3 different types of tomatoes that you can consider for your home vegetable garden. The first type is called a determinate type of tomato, and that just simply means that the height of the actual plant is determined. So what makes it really easy about determinate type tomatoes is that most of the time they're determined at a height of 4 to 5 feet, and also the fruit come in season all at one time. So if you're interested in actually canning or actually preserving some of those tomatoes at home, you can take a look at determinate type tomatoes. One example of a cell pack that we have here is a Mountain Fresh variety. This is your determinate type of tomato, and again, that would be a great one to consider if you're wanting to can or preserve those tomatoes. Now, the second type of tomato plant that you can consider is an indeterminate type tomato. This tomato is one that keeps growing and growing and growing until it's killed by frost, and also the fruit is able to successively come out in the growing season, so that way you're not having to eat all those nice juicy tomatoes all at one time. A couple of my favorites are some of even the heirloom type of indeterminates are maybe a Cherokee Purple. And you know what's nice about Cherokee Purple, or even any kind of indeterminate types, there's different colors to look at. I know oftentimes that with red types tomatoes, they're higher in acid, but other types are higher in sugar content that make it a little bit sweeter and less acid. So you might want to consider something like a Lemon Boy. Those make really nice vegetables or tomato plants to consider, that way that they don't have a huge amount of acid content to it. And then you've also got some German Pink, which is also a great one that gives you a nice mealy type texture. And then again, my favorite is Brandywine, just because it's extra sweet in some of the sugar. Now, not only can you look at some of those types of tomatoes, you can also take a look at some of the really small or cherry type tomatoes, and those are great for pasta salads or even roasting in the oven and putting a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper with it. So a couple of the examples of a cherry type tomato, we have a Super Sweet 100, and that is one type that's really easy to grow for a lot of beginning gardeners. And then another one of my favorite is Sun Gold or Sun Sugar, and it's a really sweet tomato that's really easy to eat. Now, when you're looking at planting in your home vegetable garden, I want to really stress that you make sure you plant it in full sun, at least 8 hours of sunlight. So make sure that there's no shading from any type of buildings or even other types of structures that might be around your garden. What's interesting about the tomato plant is that you can actually set it a lot deeper in the ground than you can most vegetable plants. So here you see the actual stem of the tomato plant. Here it's growing at a certain height that it's grown in the container, but you can actually, if you want to, plant all the way up to the first 2 or 3 leaves here. And what's going to happen is as you put that in the ground a little deeper, it's going to develop more of a deeper root system, so that way it's also easier to manage and take care of, and 2, it's going to be properly anchored in the ground, so that way when it does grow and develop, you've got some support for some of those bigger fruits that come in season. Now, a lot of times people want to look at putting some Epsom salts or other things like that in the planting hole. Really, if you want to just sprinkle a little bit, like a tablespoon of pelletized lime, that will help with calcium deficiency, which is known as blossom end rot. And so if you want to do that and then actually put in some water as you're planting it, that's also really good too. You probably want to look at putting at least a 2 to 4 inch layer of mulch around it, so that way it helps again hold in a lot of soil moisture, so that way you don't have that blossom end rot that occurs later on in the season. And then definitely take a look at keeping your fruit off the ground, either with a cage or some type of trellis system, or even if you like to stake those tomatoes, that's also great as well. We just want to make sure we keep the fruit off the ground, so that way that we can bring those nice tasting fruit inside to consume, and that flavor is really unique. And again, it's perfect when it's been grown on the vine here in Kentucky. If you have any questions at all about growing those great tasting tomatoes in May, please contact your local Cooperative Extension Service in Warren County at 270-842-1681. Again, I'm Kristin Hildabrand with the Warren County Extension Service as the horticulture agent, and again, we wish you a happy gardening season.